Hello, folks, and welcome to the Gallant Fuse Premier League show. My name's Colin McDuff, and I'm having another rare hosting appearance. I'm one half of a duo tonight, and I'm joined by Johnny. How are you tonight, my friend?
I'm good, mate. Thank you. Thank you. Good to be back on. Hello to yourself and hello to the listeners.
Yep, good to have you back on as always, mate. That's you made the joke last week, and I'm really starting to feel guilty now about every pod you're on. It's just one other person. I promise you, it's not just a merry-go-round of who babysits Johnny this week.
Yeah, who wants to go with that walloper? Nobody.
No, it's effective, man. You're the mainstay holding this podcast together. So quite a fair bit to get into, as always, with the world of the English Premier League. But first of all, like, eh, we can't really start anywhere other than Bournemouth, and giving our best wishes to Tom Lockyer, Johnny. eh, when you see stuff like that, it just really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? It's good to see that he's in a stable condition, but it's a frightening. It's a horrible thing to see in a football pitch.
Yeah, mate. It's a scare. It's part of life, unfortunately. We've seen it a few times. But one thing I will say with the football community is they really do rally when something like that happens. We've seen it with was it Mwamba when he nearly passed away, didn't he? We've seen it with Ericsson. Now we've seen it twice with Tom Locklear. They do all pull together, which is a good thing. It's important.
It really is, and it's. Aye, because it's a game of football. It's but we're just watching 22 men chase a daft wee ball about for 90 minutes at the end of the day. But it's good to see they work together. Not to turn it into too much of an agenda point, because the main thing is that he's all right. But I can't help but thinking you're hearing more and more about players talk about the heavy schedule and pushing their bodies to the limit. I I just can't help but think that we need to start taking the warning signs. I'm not a medical professional, obviously. I'm not saying how much this is directly related, but when you see more and more players pop up with these type of incidents, and more and more players call out that they're being overworked, overstretched, and putting their body to beyond physical boundaries, I think we need to do something about it soon, man.
I mean, yeah. We've touched on it in the pod before about the fixture load, and not just the fixture load. Obviously, the season is very competitive as it is, especially for the players playing at the top end. I mean, it's hard for them all, but you have teams like your cities and that, and even like now you've got Villa, you've got Brighton, you've got West Ham. These teams are playing on every front, and I think it probably rings a wee bit more true when they don't have the squad depth. There's no, the rotation is really limited. They don't have the quality to cover those players, so they're playing a hell of a lot more football. And you're right, they're playing it. It's like a they have to. It's like they're demanded that they play at the very very highest peak every game. So training is to the very very top of their performance. They're expected to play like that, perform like that every single game. And I think you're right. It's maybe just a bit too much. I think we do. I've always been guilty as well of being one of those people who, oh, it's a game of football. You're kicking a ball about for 90 minutes and you're getting paid fortunes. But that's probably a wee bit ignorant, really, when you look at the bigger picture. I do think we're going to see more of it because these competitions, even look at the international competitions, they keep expanding them, adding more games, making more teams qualify. Probably a good thing for Scotland, but not for many other people. So you've got all of that international level. You've got domestic cups. You've got now the Europa League's a much bigger format, much more games. Champions League's going to be going the same way. Already went that way. Now it's going that way again. And they do all these world tours, all this pre-season nonsense, and that's all money based, nothing else, to increase their scope in foreign climates. So I think it's just too much, mate. I think they put too much weight on these players. When we seen it at the weekend, we see how alarming it can be. So I don't know. I think greed is the thing that's going to stop it improving unless it gets really bad.
Aye, and I just really do hope something it's changed, and not just a lip service change. Something concrete happens. No, some concrete change for the better happens before somebody does suffer at the hands of greed. Because even you're talking about the Champions League, the Europa League, we now have the Conference League, so more and more teams are playing more and more football. The travelling involved alone, like all the listeners would have been in long journeys, long drives home, long train journeys, jet lagged after holidays, whatever you name it. But then to do that on a semi-regular basis, as well as your full-time job, pushing your body to the boundaries, it's just no, it's no feasible long term. But the main thing is right now, Tom Walker is stable and he's on the mend. But
Yeah,
the
100%.
subject agreed, Johnny, kind of leads me into the next talking point, and obviously it's a Premier League show, and we are going to get into the Premier League talking points, but I do think we kind of need to touch on it again because it's reared its ugly head, the Euro Super League. We spoke about it at length in the summer between the five of us. A kind of revamped formats came out where there'll be three tiers. You'll have the star tier with 16 teams, the gold tier with 16 teams, and the blue tier with 32 teams. And the big thing here, there's promotion and relegation between each tier, and relegation from the bottom tier as well. So basically, the top two of each tier go up and down. And if you're the in the bottom 20 of the blue tier, then you will drop out and another 20 teams will go in based on the performance. Bayern Munich have openly said that they're not going to go ahead with it. Does that put the blocks on it straight away, or is there too much traction for the English clubs?
I think again we come back to money, mate. It really does. That's the only thing enticing teams to increase their scope abroad, to rake in more cash. I don't like it. I didn't like it originally. I thought it was just however you try to paint it, and it's the same with this one. However you're trying to paint it, I think it just spits in the face of fans. I really do. Um, the whole thing just. I keep going back to it, but it just reeks of greed, mate. I was looking over the setup you were talking about with the coloured system, and it just seems like a nonsense. And you seen the outpouring the last time. I mean, there was actual rage. Nobody wanted it. No fans want this thing, and they're still going ahead with it, which tells you that you are an afterthought. I'm an afterthought. Any fans are at every single game. They don't care. If they want to push it through, they're going to try. But and I still believe, mate. I still believe the power lies with the fans and the people. If they make enough noise, teams will back down. Slowly but surely they'll bottle out. One will go, two will go, and it'll domino fall again. I did get a counterpoint for Jamie. He actually voice noted me because I think he got when he seen we were talking about this, he was not. He was a wee bit gutted to be missing out on it, you know. So I said we've got to discuss it. And
Just
like,
before you read that out, I
yeah.
think it's only fair to point out the breaking news why Jamie's not here. Jamie Royals has returned to Seven Aside Football, and there will be a full post-match reaction available on the pod next week, dissecting his performance. Don't you worry, listeners.
I'm just hoping he takes a photo post match, mate. I'm assuming he'll look like a hemorrhoid. Yeah, I don't think it's ending well for the boy. So if you don't hear from Jamie in the next few weeks, you know why. Now he was saying that Champions League format, as it is, he said 92% of this current format is not populated by champions. They are not current champions. Right? It's all second, third, fourth. And he says the reason he thinks they do that is because some of these bigger clubs, he says his own club, to be fair to him, he says like your Liverpool or whoever else, they can still get these big names in the competition, which kind of rings true with these Super Leagues. It's very similar. So yeah, I think he called it a glorified. The Champions League is a glorified league. That was the word he used. Aren't the European Super League doing the same thing? We already have it. It's called the Champions League. It says UEFA, who are in charge of the Champions League, however, have been convicted of corruption 5 times. Are they any better than the people that are offering the Super League? Right. So I mean, it has a point. But then I would ring with that. I would say, well, why would we need to change it then? If it's pretty much the same thing. You know, if it's a similar format, it's the same kind of thing. It's kind of pandering to these bigger teams, which it is. They want the bigger teams in with the bigger following worldwide because it generates more money and more eyes, more TV money, and so on and so forth. I agree with what you're saying about the Champions League. I think the Champions League has went way too far towards trying to cater to everybody. It should never be about that. It should be about champions. Should be the best of the best. I just don't like it. Mesut Ozil, I don't know if you read Mesut Ozil's comments on it. He posted something today. And he was saying pretty much what we've heard a lot of before, that as a player, he wanted to play in the best competitions, whether it be winning the domestic league, winning the Champions League, playing in the World Cup, the European Cup, so on and so forth. This is not about football. He was calling it anti-football, which is kind of where my stance is with it.
Aye. I don't think the current setup is perfect. I think it's far from it. It's far too weighted to the bigger, the so-called bigger teams in the bigger divisions weighing the more money. But this doesn't really improve it. It's better than its last incarnation, but like taking out the Scottish football bias that we have here, let's talk about somebody like Red Star Belgrade, for example. Right? If they win the league right now, they have a crack at the Champions League. They need to play through qualifiers, yes, but if they win the league, they go into this Blue Star. If they don't do, or this Blue Tier, if they don't do very well, they're back out of it until the next time round. For somebody like, at least with the current setup, you've got the playoffs where you will get into the Champions League that season. Whereas if somebody like Red Star Belgrade wanted to get into the Star tier, they're going to have to punch above their weight in this Blue tier, win that tier, and then get into the Gold tier, stay a few years in that, then be one of two teams at top that as well to get into the Star tier. The Star tier with only 16 out of 16 teams, only 2 teams a season will drop out of it. It is pretty much just protecting the biggest of the biggest. They're wanting the Real Madrid's, Barcelona's, Bayern Munich, and a handful of English teams in PSG. The teams with the most money, they're there to protect it. If they do drop down, they will be back in it within a year. That's what they're aiming for.
They're making it incredibly difficult for those kind of teams to fall out of that league. You know, that's pretty much what you're saying, and you're right. You're 100% right. But I mean, the Champions League is similar. It panders to teams that really shouldn't belong there. It's done that for a long time now. But then, why do we need another one? How are they going to? What are they expecting to do? Are they expecting to push the Champions League aside, and then we come back to again more games? What we just touched in the first point. How do they balance that? I mean, there's so much football now. Where are they expecting it to fit in amongst everything? I just can't get my head around it. Not to mention how bloody complicated they've made it. It's so overly complicated when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I'd probably advise the listeners to go and read through it instead of just listening to me spout about Blue Star and Red Star and all these fucking different acronyms. But no, you're right. Back to your earliest point, the fans will have the biggest say in that, whether we buy into it or not. I do hope that this incarnation of it forces UEFA to change what the current setup is, because the current setup is too boring for the ordinary fans. But that I'll take that with a pinch of salt, whether that happens or not.
Shock horror that Real Madrid's president Perez declared that it was a great day for the history of football. Get yourself to fuck, mate. Jeezy peeps.
Scumbag. Right, into the English Premiership then, because I don't know about you, Johnny, I could rant and rave about this for the full hour. Let's start with down the bottom of the league. Obviously, news broke since the last show. Steve Cooper is out and Nunes is in after a terrible run of form for Nottingham Forest. I think, listening to yourself and Jamie last week, writing was on the wall for Steve Cooper, but what about Nunes coming in as the manager there? Is it the right appointment? Can he get a tune out of this club?
I think it's a big ask, mate. I think they're a club that has a hugely inflated squad, probably similar to Chelsea. in terms of personnel. They've signed a lot of players on big contracts that they ain't going to get short of anytime soon. I mean, good chance to get a new manager, Buzz. But I would say consider me underwhelmed. I was looking at his record today. I mean, I had a fair idea of it anyway, but with the exception of he done a stint in Saudi, which you know about at Al Etihad, and he done okay there. I think he won when they won the league with him. It was the first time they'd won it in 14 years, something like that. But he was obviously at Spurs. He got the bullet there. He was at Wolves, and at the end of that, he left by mutual consent, which is just a nicer way of saying he got the bullet there. Porto, he got the bullet there. Valencia, there was a big shifty thing that went on because he was in charge, but then they were claiming that he was signing his own players through a mate's agency. So they were getting hugely inflated fees and making a bunch in the cuts. So he left, but yeah, he was told to leave basically. So he done well at Rio Ave. That's where he kind of started. But other than that, he doesn't really have a flourishing record managerial, to be honest with you, mate. I mean, he done okay at Wales when he was there. Towards the back end, it fell away, but he did do okay there. But I don't know, mate. I just think Forest are going to struggle a wee bit. They're missing a couple of big players, and it's showing something awful.
Apologies, I was showing him Nunes, Nuno Espiritos. Apologies, listeners. I'm with you. I don't quite see this. If we, and I know I don't want to sound a hypocrite because we've all laughed and joked about the English manager merry-go-round when a club gets towards the bottom of the league in the relegation battle. You look for your Sean Dyches, you look for your Sam Allardyce, you look for your 4-4-2 Heinz baked beans loving Newcastle loving type manager. Just as much as I agree that English clubs need to get out of that and start having a wee bit of foresight, I don't think he's got the experience for a dogfight, and there does have to be an element of that. Well, you want somebody who can build for the future. I don't think Nottingham Forest have that. As you said, they don't have the right level of squad. They need to move on a lot of players. There's nothing really you can build on, and they're not going to spend big in January. I don't really know how he gets a tune out of this. He's never really done this in his career, the dogfight. He's always had clubs in the ascendancy. If you look back at Wolves, like they were terrific that year in the Championship, and then he managed to just keep that buzz for the year after, and a really strong finish in the Premier League. But this is a completely different set of players.
Mate, when he was at Spurs, he had a decent squad. I mean, obviously, he still had Kane, and there was some serious talent in that squad. I mean, I know they've never actually got going, which has been their main concern, but they weren't terrible. I mean, they're always a top half team, and he didn't even get 4 months in that job. Sacked after 4 months. I think it was 3 months and 3 weeks, something like that. And when he went to Al Etihad, that's when they started spending big money. So he had a lot of money to spend. He's not going to get that at Forest. They spent a fortune. I can't see them going huge with the transfer window. I'm just not convinced, mate. I'm not convinced by him. I mean, it might prove me wrong. Many have, but I mean, he seemed like a likable guy when he was
said time
a
and
manager.
time again.
Sorry, anyway.
No, sorry, Johnny, let me go.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, it seemed like a really nice, likable guy. I would like to see him do well. I don't see it happening.
Aye. So obviously down that end of the table, Sheffield United lost 2-0 to Chelsea. Everton beat Burnley 2-0 away. The Luton game was obviously postponed. Just staying with Nottingham Forest and touching on Luton, Burnley and Sheffield United. Is there still 3 worse teams in Nottingham Forest? Is that maybe what's going to save him? Where he just has to get a wee bit of it. He doesn't have to turn it around. He just has to be slightly better than what they're doing, and he's going to be safe because there's 3 worse teams there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, mate. A very fair point. The way that's the way it looks just now. Sheffield United will be hoping to get a buzz with Wilder back. They've had pretty tough fixtures, and they're not getting any better anytime soon. Burnley really haven't got going at all. The only win they've got was obviously against Sheffield. I'll tell a lie, they've got two, that's a lie. But Luton seem to have got their shape a wee bit. Maybe they could do a wee bit, I don't know. Probably the least one I would have chose out of that bottom three, but recently Luton have looked a lot more solid. But yeah, I mean, I would guess that would be their thinking behind that move to him is, as long as he does enough to keep those three behind him at bay, then we'll be fine and see where we are at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think all three of these clubs were looking at Everton as sort of a potential bogey team with a 10-point deduction, but if you're Sean Dyche, you're probably looking for a 10-point deduction every 6 months, man. If that's the type of reaction it gets your players, that's 4 on the bounce, man. Up to 16 points into 16th place. Fair play. I've been heavily critical of the Sean Dyche appointment. I still don't know if he's the right man long term, but let's talk about Everton a wee while. Like, comfortable win over Burnley. And they're getting victories.
They've completely surprised me. I was the same. I mean, I wouldn't say I was so much critical as Dyche. I don't really hate Dyche. I think he's very much Marmite. You know what I mean? He's just bland, boring, but does the job if that's what you're after. And that's pretty much what he's doing at Everton. He's got them pretty similar to when he had Burnley playing quite well. They are a team of bruisers. They are a team of bullies. They are very, very hard, very, very strong. Sorry, and I think that's exactly how that's his mould. That's what he was looking for, big target man up front. But I mean, you got to give credit where it's due, mate. They've been excellent. At the weekend there, they were well worth their victory, and the games they've won recently, they've been excellent. I think they'll still have a blip here and there, mate. I think we'll probably see small patches where they go off form, but I think they'll do more than enough. But I agree, the reaction to that deduction has been night and day, because they started off shockingly bad, and it looked like the writing might be on the wall, and they might be one of the ones down. But right now, it's not looking like that. I mean, I was reading today, that's the first time they've had 4 wins in a row in 3 years, and the last time they won 4 in a row without conceding was 21 years ago. I mean, that's crazy start.
Wild, and we've been leveling at them about their goal return. Like, out of the bottom 7, they've scored the most goals so far this season. They're starting to get goals, and they're not just relying on Calvert-Lewin for that. Defensively, they've conceded the least goals in the bottom. I'm looking at it here in the bottom 14, though. You need to go way up to 4th place, Man City, to find a club who's conceded less goals in the Premier League than Everton this season. Maybe we have been a wee bit overly critical of them, but again, how long are they able to carry this form on for, Johnny? Is this just a bounce in the face of adversity?
I think it's definitely gave them a rocket up the arse. I think we can all see that. You can't really argue that. But I think Dyche is probably a big part of it as well. I give him credit. You know, he's made them incredibly hard to beat. You've seen them in the game at the weekend. The goals they scored, they basically just bullied Burnley, bullied the keeper. Even for the second goal, I forget who it was, but the lads went for a challenge and he got bullied for a simple. He should have won the ball, but the strength beat him, and then Keane ran in and made it 2-0. And that seems to be their game. They've done that consistently over the last few weeks. I think they're really going to rely on keeping certain players fit. I think for a squad like Everton, that's going to be key. I know you can say that about a lot of the squads in the Premier League, but I think for them that would be huge. There's a few players in that team that are making them tick. Your Doucouré, your Onana, these kind of guys, these big bruisers in the middle of the park. If they lose them, I think that's maybe when we'll see a wee dip in form.
Yeah. Moving on to the other end of the league again, and I want to start talking about the title challenge, because there's a few clubs probably in this conversation, but I'm going to start at Anfield. Jamie will be probably quite pleased he's not been asked about this one, because I do think if Liverpool are serious title contenders, they need to see this as 2 points dropped. Not an each with Man U, obviously always a high pressure game, big derby in the north of England. What was your thoughts on this game, Johnny?
I thought Liverpool were trying to do their usual self and come out the traps and blow Man United away. I mean, probably had that last time, the big victory when there was 7-0, when they played them at home, and they're probably thinking they're going to do that again. I think United turned up not to lose. I think that's a manager under a lot of pressure. So it probably set them up that way, be dogged, don't give much away, and we'll try and come away with something. And to be fair, they should have scored first with Højlund. They had the better chances early on, but after that, it was pretty much all Liverpool, and Man United had the backs to the wall. I can understand it. I'm not knocking it. Sometimes you need to do what you need to do to try and get points back on the board. But yeah, I think Liverpool should have won that game, probably comfortably, mate. I said last week, Liverpool have kind of went under the radar a wee bit. We talk a lot about Arsenal, we talk about Man City, even Villa's form, whereas Liverpool are ticking away and sitting well up there. And if we're talking about challengers, it doesn't mean they're going to be a challenger at the end, but right now they are. I think that probably suits them. They're probably enjoying that wee bit, not as much focus on them while they're still churning out results, and there's only 1 point between it now.
I think I've seen probably a mixed reaction to the Liverpool Man U game, but I think it's far too harsh to be writing Liverpool off. I think it is very much a whip. I mean, you need to go back to April 2023 for the last time that they didn't score in a competitive game. It's wild, and you're right, they did set up their usual self. They dominated the ball, they had most of the chances. But it's a long season. You are going to have these blips here and there. And I think the important thing is that they just bounce back from it. And I think we've seen enough from them. They've dropped a point. They've had a couple of silly draws so far, but they've come back all the stronger for it and went on a run. On Man U, how big a point is that for Man U, or given that Liverpool, they maybe caught Liverpool on a bit of an off day, it was that maybe a game where Erik ten Hag should have looked for a bit more breathing space?
No, I think it was probably I think he played the only card he's got. I mean, he could have went for it, but I think if he went for it with that team, he'd have got cut to pieces. He would have got caught. I think probably, although it was, it was dog meat on the eyes. Sometimes you just have to do that. And end of the day, it's a derby. I know it's not like a local derby, but they class it as a derby. And those games don't always go the way you would predict. We've seen it all ourselves 100 times, so probably more than that. So sometimes, it's just a wee bit lackluster. I mean, Liverpool have been lackluster a few times recently. They've got the wins, probably similar to Arsenal when they've been getting wins. They've looked a bit off. Grinding out results. Liverpool have been doing that too. But no, at the weekend there, I think for Man United, I think it's a good point. I think they'll be happy with it, mate. And they really, really need to start grinding points on the board. For all we think, we're talking about they're in trouble and things are bad. They're seventh, and they're only 9 points off Liverpool, I think, or maybe 10. But it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, 6 points away for the Champions League spot, and 5 off Tottenham in that European spot. And given the amount of criticism Man U's got, if you finish the year 5 points within European spot, then you're probably going to take it as a Man U fan. If you can see the team on a bit of an ascendancy.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about that and all with Man United, that the scrutiny they are under. I would argue all day that there is no team in that league that comes under the microscope like Man United does. The manager, the players, the media just jump on it and crucify them, but it doesn't really paint a true picture. I'm not saying they haven't been off, because they have, but I don't think it's as dire straits as we're being, the path they're leading us down. He could easily get a few results and he'd be right back in the mix.
With that in mind, because I've probably been guilty of this on the pod as well about Eric Ten Hag saying just with the amount of scrutiny and the amount of pressure, and when we're saying he's just X amount of bad results away for the sack or one game away for the sack, then you can't recover for that. Am I maybe part of the problem? Am I maybe falling into the guilty party here? Like basically, I'm asking, does he see out the rest of the season, and we just need to maybe ignore the noise a wee bit?
I think that's the problem, mate. I think you're right in a way, because I think the noise does cause a problem. It does create pressure, and it does put fan pressure, even their own fans, on that manager. Sometimes where it's not really required, because for me, I think there's far bigger problems at Man United than the manager. There's only many managers you can churn through and give the same excuse about losing a dressing room before you start thinking there has to be something else at play here. He said when he was brought in, he was there to try and remove the egos, hence why Ronaldo was moved on, which I thought was the right thing to do. And I think he has been trying that, and probably a few of them don't like it. But none of us know for sure really what's going on there. We don't know what kind of relationship they have. We're only listening to what the media tell us. And it's easy to buy into that. We all do it. But does the board listen to that? Do they get put under that pressure? I suppose that's where the question lies. I really don't know, mate, because I think that's what's caused the last 5 seconds is the noise, or at least it's definitely exasperated it.
Definitely, and like the UK media, like it's why we have fan podcasts like this. The UK media do thrive in drama. If there is none, they will create some. So I think I maybe need to look at myself and talk about the Ten Hag situation, because I'm still looking at the Man U expectations of 2003, and they're a different club. You're right there.
Mate, you've just nailed it. They are a different club, and the Man United fans, a lot of them don't want to accept that. They don't have the squad. They have far too much deadwood. They have far too many players that are not at the calibre that they once were, because they had so much success for so long that when you look at it now, you just have to realise that it's still a massive transition. If they want to get back to that, there's a long way to go to get to there.
So staying at the top of the league, because I think we've both agreed that Liverpool are still firmly title contenders. And there's a handful of teams I think can really, well, it's not just the start of the season, but we're almost halfway through the season, and there's maybe I'm putting 5 teams in the conversation, but I think the other 4 teams have probably got more confidence, because Man City are continuing to drop points. I might be putting too much weight or expectation on Man City there, but I think the more that they slip up, the more hope it gives the rest of the challengers, because we know they can go into this juggernaut mode. But another 2 points dropped at home to Crystal Palace, 2-0 up, and in the second half, goals for Mateta and a 95th minute Olise penalty gets Palace a point. I should say to the listeners, obviously it's my fault again. I think the last few pods I've been on, I've told you about my last man standing picks. I'm in various last man standings, and you guessed it, had Man City in one of them this week, so I take the heat for that. But Johnny, time and time again, Man City kick in a gear in January, but I think there's only so many times you can say that they will pull it back in January. Where do you see them right now?
I was just thinking about, excuse me, I wish I had checked that we're at 17 games now. That's 4 draws and 3 losses. I'd love to match that against the last few seasons and see the kind of record they had at 17 games. If they've ever had that many points dropped, or if that's an average, because they do. I mean, they don't start slow, but sometimes they do start off the boil. Dropping points here and there. We've seen it last season. Halfway through the season, they were already a fair chunk of the way off Arsenal, and there were people writing them off, saying it was Arsenal's year and Arsenal are going to do it at a canter. The problem is, you first you have to know how the teams above Man City at that time are going to do. Are they going to handle that? How are they going to do injuries? We've seen Arsenal buckle last season. It could easily happen again. Second, you've got Man City, as you say. I said it before, Man City don't really get going till it's like maybe the first quarter of the season, towards the back end of the first quarter. That's when you see Man City kick into gear. And it's not like they've just done it last year, they've done it virtually every year. It's like a totally different team. And another thing we're forgetting is they've got KDB back in training now, and he's pretty close for what I've read. I mean, that would be a huge boost for them. Huge boost, because I mean that boy's a phenomenal talent. He's a huge player for City, and they have missed him. But no, I'm not overly concerned with the way things are in Man City. I think that'll get put right. I think maybe need a wee bit longer, but I don't think we'll see much more of this. I think things will start to level out. It doesn't mean the other teams won't keep up with the pace. Nobody knows, but I think Man City will definitely kick into a different gear.
So last season, after 17 games, they were in 41 points. Season before, after 17 games, they were in 38 points. Both seasons, no, sorry, no, I've read that wrong. I'll just go away last year. 41 points after 17 games, 2 points behind Arsenal. I think you do make a good point on Kevin De Bruyne coming back, and obviously they were missing the main man, Erling Haaland. But even without they two, they still have the strongest depth in the league. They do that. So bring back two of arguably the greatest striker in the world right now. Kevin De Bruyne, he's in the top 5-6 midfielders in the world. Bringing that into your squad, it would change any team's title challenges, but just adding that onto the strongest squad, it's a game changer. But I don't know. Like I think, how many times can you do it? And I might be underestimating the genius of Pep Guardiola here. How many times can you just turn into switch on the relentless button in January? Is it maybe because you've got, like in the first half of the season, a lot of Champions League football, League Cup football, then it gets to the business end? But I don't know, how many times can you do that? I might be sounding silly in May by saying that.
I think this is the season that they've released the most talent that was crucial to that squad compared to previous seasons where you're, with Gundogan going, your Cancelo's away. There was more than that, but it'll come to my head. But they were huge players for City, especially in that treble last year. So yeah, I mean, that has to leave a mark, definitely. And I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. If KDB, especially if they get him fit and he stays fit for a good run, his assists alone for Haaland last season when Haaland was flying was just obscene. Nearly as obscene as Haaland's goals itself. The two of them link up really well. But I mean, yeah, you're right. It can't go on forever, definitely. I mean, and like I say, I am not saying they're going to 100% nail it, because we have no idea what the other teams are going to do. They could do the same thing. I have no idea. But I do think they'll be there, and I do think they'll still be the team to beat. I do, especially with that kind of talent in the squad. When you've got those kind of players, even if you've lost a few, I think they have all the momentum, and I think they hold the flush.
Aye, they do. And just moving on to the other teams, then league leaders Arsenal, 3 points behind where they were last season, but they've put a gap of 5 points between themselves and Man City, only a point ahead of Liverpool and Aston Villa. I thought this might have been a tricky tie for them. They did leave it late to really cement it. Jesus getting the goal in the 53rd minute, then Havertz putting it to bed in the 87th, and you find with a 1-goal lead, Brighton always have a chance of getting back into the game. But it's, they go over the line, and again, second half of last season, maybe games they wouldn't have got over the line, and maybe the pressure would have built a wee bit. But what was your thoughts in that game?
To be honest, score-wise, it was pretty much what I expected. I think I actually predicted 2-0 in the wee prediction league we do. I think Brighton are maybe suffering a wee bit now with the Euro football, and they're probably getting more injuries due to that with the extra game load that they've had before. I thought it was pretty standard for them, mate. Pretty much a straightforward win. Brighton are always dangerous, you can never ever write them off. But I just think they are maybe, I wouldn't say struggling, because they're still winning games. They're probably just not as consistent as they were before, sorry. But we spoke about this again, I think pre-season we had said, especially your Brightons, your Villas has probably been the more surprising how well they've dealt with it. Newcastle, we're seeing that decimated squad. Excuse my dogs. Again, I think it just comes down to fixture load. So I think Brighton are probably, it's not the Brighton I would have expected to see. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But I mean, Arsenal were pretty professional and got the job done. But I mean, it's still, like you say, it's very, very close up there, mate. It's not like last season where they were creating a gap that, there's virtually nothing there.
Aye. And I think the question will always be labelled to Arsenal if they can go the distance, until they actually do go the distance, because it's been so long since they have been serious title contenders year on year. Last year was very much outlier. They don't do it consistently. So that is just something they're going to have to deal with in the pressure. Just on the Brighton point, just to kind of jump away from the top of the league, and we'll go back to it. At time of recording, they're getting beat 1-0 away to Crystal Palace. And we have said it till we're blue in the face about Brighton struggling with the European football. So Newcastle now don't have any. Newcastle, Man U, neither of them have any European football after Christmas, and they're in 6th and 7th place. West Ham, while they are still in European competition, they tend to cope with it a wee bit better. They've coped with it in recent years better than Brighton have, and they're probably more used to it by now. Chelsea just 4 points behind Brighton, and there still is maybe the opinion that they might come good at the end of the year. I don't see Brighton getting European football, if I'm being honest. I think I've been worried about this for a couple of months, and I think halfway through the season, I think it's a big ask for them to get that, particularly when they are going to be playing Europe, the knockout tournaments after Christmas.
Yeah, I would expect to see it level out a wee bit for, with Man United and Newcastle, especially Newcastle. I think we've seen it more there, but they've been desperately unlucky with injuries. I mean, it's a horrendous list, and they're slowly recovering, but they're still miles off. But I never realised, I actually only noticed this today, that Brighton actually have quite a heavy list to sell. And so, like, before tonight, they've got Enciso out, who was huge for them. He was starting to come into his game, the young lad. Estupiñán's a big player for them. He's out. Ansu Fati, who they brought in for Barca, he's out. Lamptey, out. Sonny March, I mean, he's a cracking player. He's out. Joel Veltman, huge for them. He's out. And Webster. So, I mean, that's, every one of them's a first-team starter. That's, what did I say? There's 7 or 8 players out. So, take that, add in the heavy fixture load. I think that's when you start getting more and more injuries, and it gets harder to cover it. I think that's what we're seeing with Brighton. They don't really have the depth. They're using more and more kids who don't really have Premier League experience. So it's quite, and I don't like to see it. I have a wee bit of a soft spot for Brighton, but I suppose that's part of the game when you want to compete on every bit of competition you can.
Yeah, and I think there's no harm in getting to a level and saying, okay, we didn't quite prepare for this, so let's go again and fix it next year. Like, I think I'd be heartbroken if they regressed and they started going down the leagues as of next season. I think teams like Brighton and Brentford, build from the bottom up, and they're sensible with their infrastructure. It's football clubs run properly, unlike the likes of Man U. So I
Yeah.
do think they'll have enough to bounce back. If they don't get European football, they'll bounce back next year, I think. But yeah, I think it's okay and just getting to a level and seeing, right, we weren't quite prepared for it, let's go again.
I think you need a huge slice of luck, Colin. I think you really do. When you want to sustain, whether it's just consistency or a challenge or winning a trophy, you need a lot of luck, especially with injuries. You've seen perfect example was Liverpool's title win, and it's not a dig, Jamie, when you listen to this back. You would admit it yourself, but they had the best run of luck with injuries that season. They had a thin squad. They won the league. That was during COVID, if you remember, and I mean, they were excellent. They were dominant. They were excellent, but they nearly all of the top players had nothing more than minor injuries. Um, so you need that slice of luck. You really do. And I think your Brighton, your Newcastle, and there's more teams in the league that are suffering, but they're not having that luck at all, and it's making it harder and harder. But I think for Brighton as well, it levels out. There's so many young players there. They're getting more experience. They're being thrown into the deep end. It's not going to do them any harm. So I think in the long run, as long as they can hold on to those players, they should be okay.
Jumping back up to the top of the league, Johnny, a team we've given so much praise so far this calendar year, actually. End of last season when we were given a player of the years and stuff, I touted Emery for manager of the season. I thought the way he's turned around Aston Villa was excellent. They're a point off Arsenal at the top of the league, and it looked at a shaky game for them on Saturday against Brentford, where they went 1-0 down on the stroke of half time, and they left it late, 30 minutes to go to pull one back and then get the winner 5 minutes from time. I say a shaky game, they did dominate most of the ball, but I thought that when they go 1-0 down, it's I was interested to see how's the character come back to that. But you've just spoke about luck here, and I know you and Jamie the last few weeks have talked about the squad depth and they're not really missing too many players with injury. That might be a factor in how far they go this year.
I think they're prepared really well. Villa, I think they knew that they had to improve that squad. They needed more quality, more depth, and they've done that. And yeah, I would agree. They've been okay with injuries, nothing too heavy anyway. Definitely had some, but I mean they've been a breath of fresh air. They really have. They've been excellent. They're good to watch. They're free flowing. And what I like about Emery is when a game's not working, he knows how to change it. He reacts fast. He's done that a few times. He's not afraid to hook at half time, even if it's like 1-0. He gave them time at the weekend to try and rectify it. I think he made his subs on the hour, but then the game changed. He brought on, I tell you, a player that's really came on is Leon Bailey. He's looking fantastic. I mean, there was always there was signs there that that there was a player, but he's been unlucky with injuries as well. But he's getting a good run now, and he's been phenomenal for him. He really has. But and the other lad that scored, Moreno, he's been away for a while. He's had a long injury too. He's a good player too. It's another player back to their depth. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think they signed well, they've added depth, and they're dealing with all the football really well. If they keeps going like that, mate, they could easily still be up there.
And signed well, absolutely. Some players have come in just taking that team a level above, but even the likes of Leon Bailey, Matty Cash, and guys like John McGinn, who was never terrible under Gerrard, but he just seems to be back at that level we were talking about a couple of years ago when we were asking how much money does he go for. Ollie Watkins getting a goal as well. What was already there, they're well coached, well drilled, well trained, and having that confidence to try and let players play themselves back into it, albeit yes, at the weekend he had to make the changes to get that, but I think that shows you how far these players have come, where the manager puts faith and not just to knee-jerk change it straight away.
No, I agree with you. He's. I don't think I thought Giles maybe a wee bit out of his depth there, maybe just a bit too soon. Needed more time in the game. It was a huge jump for him, and Emery is a very, very astute coach. I mean, I think most people will tell you that he got cut short at Arsenal, way too short. They were far too scattered on with that dismissal. He just has a really good football head, mate, and it's shown. It's I mean, I would say I was still a wee bit surprised. I didn't expect him to do terribly. I thought he would do okay, but I didn't expect him to be up there pretty much in the challenging zone. So you can only give full credit for that, mate. And mate, they didn't spend a fortune this season. I think I don't know what they spent actually, but it must be 80 million. Is that right?
We should caveat that with a fortune in comparison of Premier League terms.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I'm trying to remember myself because Diaby I think was about 50 and Torres was 30s. But I mean, even then, that's two fantastic players with high quality. And it's a horrendous amount of money, but given what we're seeing teams playing, it's a good price. And obviously, they sign players within the Premier League and that as well. So no, can only sing the praises, mate. I think it's a long season. We'll see how they go on, but so far they've done excellent.
And I wonder, because they've in Premier League terms, because they've broke the bank in the summer, will they add some additions in January? Obviously, it's always a tough window, but when you look at there's a European there's a Euros this summer. I wonder if we'll maybe see Aston Villa add a wee bit more depth because we've got European football after the winter break and the dizzying heights of third right now. Like, I wonder if we will see some. I don't think they'll bring a lot of players, but one or two solid additions. I think we could see that happening.
I think with success, when they start getting a feel for that, which they will be right now, but yeah, I think the temptation's always there to add a wee bit more depth and keep it going, give them more options if Emery needs it. So I wouldn't be surprised, mate. I never actually answered your question about John McGinn. I love seeing John McGinn do well, mate. Honestly, it's more just a case of, it's just because it's one. Jamie will tell you this, right? I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I called this years ago that he belonged at a higher level, and also to see one of our own homegrown going down there and being successful. It's lovely to see. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them spend some money, mate. I think they have the money. They have a really good revenue. So absolutely.
So we've ran through most of the fixtures, so I touched on them mainly. There wasn't too many other shocks. Also Spurs beating Nottingham Forest comfortably 2-0. Chelsea beating bottom of the league Sheffield United 2-0. A team I want to ask you about before we finish up. Newcastle United 3-0 victory against Fulham. Fulham have looked all right the past few weeks. And Newcastle obviously been kind of stop-start in general, with first time in Europe in a long time, ravaged with injuries, as you said, but pretty, obviously they're going down against Fulham, going down to 10 men would have helped at no end. But how did you see their performance on Saturday?
That was Fulham, yeah.
Well, the game in general, Fulham and Newcastle.
Yeah, no, I'm just remembering the fixtures, mate. I'm heads a bit scattergun today. Yeah, it's they've been a wee bit erratic, really, but I kind of put that down to so much extra football. And like you've just touched on, the injuries are horrendous. They're always going to be up and down when you have that many players out. I mean, their defence has been a complete patch-up for weeks and weeks now, and they're playing some of the best teams in Europe as well. But I mean, that's a good result. When you look at the way Fulham have been, because that was prior to that game, Fulham had scored, I think it was 16 goals in 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I mean, obviously Liverpool beat them, but they scraped that one. I mean, Fulham were excellent in that game as well. they turned over Wolves, and then they go and stick 5 past Forest and 5 past West Ham. I mean, the West Ham one was a complete shock result. So I maybe expected a wee bit more for Fulham. But then you have to give the credit to Newcastle. I think it's a good result for them, mate. It was in between Champions League games as well. I think when we get, like you said, they're coming out of European football. I think once that happens now, and you'll start seeing once the injuries start coming back to full fitness, I think we'll see a much stronger Newcastle, well, much more consistent anyway.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they do get on, because I was surprised when they didn't sign heavily in the summer, because I thought after such a strong season last year they would have broke the bank and really went for it this year. So I'm interested to see how this squad copes just domestically for the second season without the distraction of European football, because it still is, like at the bare bones, it is still a really decent squad full of talent.
I think the crazy thing was with the squad was, go back a few weeks, maybe a wee bit more than that, they had a horrendous amount of injuries in defence. I mean, it was really bad. They're still missing. I think Fabian Schär's got a knock now. Kraft obviously took a dun at the weekend, courtesy Levi Colwell, and then Target's out as well. But now in the middle of the park, it's kind of flipped. Now they're missing. Gordon's got a knock for this weekend. Joe Linton's out. Jacob Murphy's out. Anderson's out. Harvey Barnes is out. Tonali's obviously missing. And Joe Willock's out as well. So midfield-wise, other than trying to think, Bruno, Almiron, I think Longstaff's just back. After that, it's kids. So now the midfield's absolutely toiling as well. You know, it's weird how it's flipped positions. But the Newcastle spending, one thing I was considering today was, I kind of think the same. I think we kind of expected that money to come in, and obviously they have to balance the financial fair play and that, so that kind of constrains them. But I expected to see far more activity as well. But I was thinking about when Man City got taken over originally. I don't know if you remember back then, but when Man City started to transition for, you know, having no success in the lower leagues, when they got bought over, the players they were bringing originally, they weren't signing huge stars. You know, they were spending money, but they weren't buying these big names. They maybe bought one or two, but mostly it was like, you know, it was like journeyman. Remember, like Big Sean Gota, he was playing up front for a few seasons.
Aye.
The goat, feed the goat, and he'll score.
And
so
who was the boy?
Spent heavy.
And who's the boy that got for Blackburn? Was it Rocky Santa Cruz?
Did they sign him? Well, they had.
Who's the boy that got for Blackburn? Was it Rocky Santa Cruz? Aye.
I'm trying to remember. They signed the Brazilian lad, the really tricky winger. I can't remember his bloody name. Is it? No, it wasn't Beto.
Robinho.
Yeah, that's the one. That was me. I think that was their first real star signing. Yeah, you're right. He did go to City. He went to City, Blackburn to City in 2009. He was there for 4 years. So yeah, like I say, they weren't spending huge amounts, but then it kind of just went mental. It was like, find our feet, spend a wee bit of money, see where we are, and then we'll properly go at it. I think we might see similar with Newcastle. I was going to say financial fair play will come into, but it didn't really come into play for City, did it? It's just catching up with them now with their 8 trillion charges.
Aye, they've got a good 10 years until they need to worry about that. Newcastle.
Yeah.
But Johnny, I think that's a good time to wrap up. That's just us going to the mark. Is there anything else you want to run through for the listeners before we finish up?
No, not at all, mate. I think for me it would just be, I hope you all have a lovely Christmas. All the best for New Year. Hopefully we can fit a show in between Christmas and New Year. This could be the last one.
Aye, just echo that. Plenty of football played over the festive period. I hope everybody enjoys it, enjoys times off with their loved ones or friends, and just go and eat. eat and be gluttonous and enjoy yourself, man. And a massive thank you to everybody who's supported the pod in the Premier League show this year. Another wee shout out, we launched our Patreon this week, so if you do like more of what you see or what you hear even, gives a wee like just £1 a month, you get up an extra show every day. But no, I'm very Merry Christmas to all when it comes. Johnny, thank you for joining as always, mate.
Always a pleasure, mate. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a good year. Thank you.
And yeah, Merry Christmas all. Take care.